everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Irreplaceable Truths. I'm Dr. G, retired veterinarian of many, many years. Just trying to teach you some lessons that I learned the hard way, just so you do not have to. And I also have guests on that are trying to do the same. And I'm very lucky today. We have the Hawk, Dr. Jennifer Hawkins, with us. Wow, so many things that she is. Southern California Veterinary Medical Association executive member, current president of the California Veterinary Medical Association. She is a UC Davis grad from the year 2000. We graduated the same year. So do the math. That's 50 years in this room. It's incredible. Well, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
The first question I asked all my guests, when did you know veterinary medicine was for you?
I was 4.
You were 4.
I was 4. My grandfather, who was kind of like a dad to me, former cattle rancher, big teddy bear heart. They always had pets. I had that love for animals, and I loved it when we took our pet to the veterinarian. They always kind of oohed and awed about it, and I just felt so proud that this was our pet, and I was intrigued. I will share that my interest waned as I got a little older, and my mother told me I would have to dissect a cat. And I don't want to be like, you don't want to do that. You'll have to dissect a cat. And I thought that sounded like the worst thing that you could ever do if you're interested in this. And then in high school, I had to dissect a frog. And I just thought it was so interesting to see the insides of the animal and have to learn the parts that made it work. So it just kept my track on from there.
And then you said you started off community college.
Yep.
Transferred into Davis.
Yep.
One of the very rare ones that Davis accepted out of Davis, because Davis likes to get, just like all the schools, they like to get a little bit of mix from all around the country. How much of your undergrad did you do at JCC as far as prerequisites?
About half of it. So I went straight from, I'm born and raised in Sacramento. I went to a junior college in Sacramento called American River College. I did all my basically everything I could do with the low level there, and then transferred to UC Davis for all my upper division science.
Upper division science.
Yeah.
So you did your calculus at JCC, physics at JCC.
Yes.
Biology at JCC.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a big recommendation I always give to people or students who are interested in veterinary school, is that they don't realize they can major in whatever they want, right? They could be a philosophy major. They could be a marketing major. They could be a Spanish major.
Yep.
But the prerequisites are what are required. And if you do it at a JCC, you can do it, probably learn more, do it at less cost, and probably get a better grade doing
Smaller classes. The class size, I was able to, the teachers know who you are. I don't want to say it's easier to get the A, but it's a smaller pool of people, so you get that more intimate approach. And when I went to UC Davis and was in a classroom of 450 people, it's a different feeling. It's very different. I had to make an effort to make sure I didn't get lost in the mix. And that can be hard when you're 18, 19 years old to go straight into that class, that huge pool of students.
So your experience prior to applying or getting into vet school, were you working at a veterinary clinic?
I was volunteering at a veterinary hospital. Was I working at one by then? Boy, you just mentioned when we graduated, so I've got to kind of go back into the cobwebs a little bit. I think I was working multiple jobs. I was going to junior college. I was working at a coffee place that got a paycheck at, and I was volunteering hours at a veterinary hospital so that I could get the experience that was required.
So you had 100 hours, do you think, of veterinary experience?
I think it was more like 800 or something higher than that.
So, yeah, you went higher.
Yeah.
Because some of the veterinary schools are 0. Some are only 100. And I'm like, what are you going to learn in 2.5 weeks?
Yeah.
You know?
It wasn't just the small animal practice, though. I also volunteered at the Sacramento Zoo. And then I also worked in a vet med immunology lab on campus at UC Davis. Oh, and I volunteered with a gal who owned cattle and sheep. She was a veterinarian so we would go out and trim hooves or vaccinate.
Oh, the hoof trimming.
Yeah.
The infamous hoof trimming, right?
Right.
And foot rot in sheep and what was it? You have to make, what is it, a copper solution you have them walk through?
I don't think I didn't have to do that, but yes, it is a copper solution.
Yeah. See, I remembered.
Yeah, I know that.
The small animal vet's still going back. See, at Illinois, they train veterinarians. Everyone else was starting to track. And I remember I was learning all this large animal stuff, and the stupid stuff I remember.
Oh, well, you had to remember some of the odd stuff because that sometimes could be a board question or, yeah.
So we took the California board same year. Which version did you have?
What do you mean? Like the paper version versus?
No. I had the paper. Everyone, but there was A through G. There was 7 different versions of the test.
I have no idea.
I had the pig version, and being an Illinois guy, that was the easiest test I took. I got scored a 96% on that test.
The pig version, you said?
Yeah, because
mine had a lot of pig stuff in it.
So you might have had
I
it
had
too.
like pseudo rabies and I can't
a lot
remember.
Of pig stuff. It was crazy because, and then I talked to my wife at the time. She took it too. She had the cat version.
Okay, I didn't. This is news to me. I didn't know there were different versions.
I don't know if it was because they had a bunch of, obviously they're always.
I don't think I had a single small animal in mine. I feel like it had all
large animal stuff. Yeah. And it's really weird. Now it's just state law that you need to know. But back in the day when we took it, the California Veterinary Board exam was the hardest exam you could take in the country. It was worse than the national.
Yeah, it was really hard.
The pass rate at Davis was not that good.
Well, so did you get your results over President's Day weekend?
I don't remember.
So I think we took it in the fall, or maybe, I can't remember if it was January. Is the beginning of January.
January.
So President's Day weekend. So I tested. I had a group of friends, and there were some people that they just, they were alive and they just knew all the information and they took test grade and they always excelled. I wasn't one of those people. I was somebody who had to study really hard. And then I also had to be careful that I overthink on a test. I don't know if you've heard of that quality in this field.
Always
Anybody
go
who
with
overthinks.
your first choice.
So I sometimes do them. So I knew that there was another guy in the class who tested, like he and I tested similarly on almost everything. And so almost all of my friends got their test results on the Friday before President's Day weekend. And I had already heard of some of them that didn't pass it. And 2 of them were people that I was always aligned with, that we always tested the same, and they didn't pass it. So I had to suffer all the way through until Tuesday after the weekend to know that I passed.
But you passed.
Yes.
And we move on.
Yes.
Right? Because that's all vet school is about. It's about passing. We've all been through it, the 25-hour credit hour. Well, you're on the trimester system, right?
Yeah.
So you had a lot more crammed in a shorter period?
I don't know. It sure felt crammed. There was a lot. I remember the very first couple of months of veterinary school. I mean, you're in class essentially 8 to 5. There's a break in there for lunch that often included a club meeting or something, and they would almost always have pizza. So whether you wanted to be a member of the club or not, you went because you got to eat something.
Yeah, exactly.
And you didn't have the energy to walk across the street to where food was, and then you'd continue on your day until 5 o'clock or whatever, and you go home and then you'd study your butt off and then go back the next day. And I bumped into people on campus that I had worked with in that vet med immunology lab after I'd been in vet school for, I don't know if it was weeks or months, but I remember I was so exhausted that I wanted to smile and have all the normal, the things you do in response to people that, hey, this is great. And I didn't have the energy to pull up the sides of my face because I was just so exhausted.
Would you say vet school for you was a smooth ride or a bumpy ride?
Wow, that's a great question. I honestly felt like looking back, I would say smooth in that I knew if I did the things, studied and took the tests and did all the things that you're expected to do, that I would get through and I'd get to where I wanted to be. I didn't have really any negative experiences there. I had great teachers, great friends. So I felt, it was one of my favorite memories.
Group.
Yeah.
Everyone gets that core group.
Yeah.
Or they should.
Mm-hmm.
Like they should. You should get that core group that you all lean on each other. That you all have the same values, the same beliefs and stuff like
that.
Right. I had the core group of C equals DVM.
Mm-hmm.
I had the core group of let's drink a few beers as we're going to review anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
I had let's go to, you didn't have it at Davis, but let's go to football on Saturdays. Let's make sure we catch basketball games. Let's make sure we do stuff.
Yeah, lots of social. And anytime there was a week where Monday did not have a test, which those were hard to find, there was blowout parties all weekend long, just having fun, letting loose, and then
So is that how you recovered?
Yeah, it is, because you kind of... kind of like a dog that has to work all day long, and then you let it go play. You tell it doesn't have to conform or
What
sit
is that
or
called?
stay.
Monday morning sickness?
Yeah,
Or
get the zoomies. You get the, yeah, Monday morning. Yeah, but you know, like a dog that needs to have the zoomies. Sometimes I think, you know, as a 20-something, you need to, maybe as a 50-something, you need to have that moment where you can just let loose,
You
be
have to.
yourself, have fun, be social, and it's all shared experiences. I mean, you are in the probably one of the most stressful times of your life with the same core group of people going through the same experiences together.
Correct. And that's very important to drive home. I try to do that on every episode, is that not everyone's going to understand what you're going through as a veterinary student unless they're going through it with you or they've already done
Yeah.
it, right? So do not expect your family to understand. Do not expect your significant other to understand. Do not, unless they're in there with you. I was lucky. My wife at the time, we met at the interview. So we went through the whole thing together.
Wow.
Yeah, the whole thing together, the whole gamut. So that made it easier for me. You know, I already had my core group of one there, and then she had her girlfriends that they go study in the library, and I have my guy friends, which there was only 7 guys in my class of 85, and we'd go find a bar, or we'd go find somewhere to get wings or something like that.
So I hung out with the guy group.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and we also didn't, I don't know if we only had 8, but we were 75%. So we would have 20, 25 or so guys, but
Yeah.
there was a core group of guys that I hung out with.
Yeah, it was very important to make sure you found that way to do that. You know, again, my wife, amazing, brilliant veterinarian, amazing person. She almost left after first semester because all she did was study. Study. And I finally convinced her, you know what? You don't need to learn chapter 4 of virology. You just need to know important pieces that you might use in veterinary practice.
She was afraid to fail. Yeah.
Well, that's the biggest problem I feel with a lot of veterinarians, is that they have this idea of perfectionism.
I don't know what you're talking about. No, absolutely. I identify with that. And when I had the honor to speak to UC Davis students during their white coat ceremony last year, I was able to say, I shared that. I said, don't get caught up chasing perfection, because you're never going to find it. All those mentors, the people that you're looking up to, and veterinary, the people that you're going to just put up on that pedestal. I had such great faculty members, great residents teaching me once I was in my 4th year. And I thought they knew everything. I thought, if I can just get there, it'll be fine. And I didn't know. I didn't know that they didn't know everything.
No, it's okay not to know everything. Yeah. It's okay to be human. But unfortunately, and we'll get into it, I think clients expect us to be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I guess it's that the white coat mentality. I don't know. But it is very hard. So you graduate vet school, internship, or you go right into practice?
I went right into practice.
Okay. And good mentorship once you?
I was lucky, and I sought mentorship. When I was at Davis, they were telling us to look for a place that will offer you mentorship. I landed in Mission Viejo at a veterinary practice that had, you may remember the late Dr. Ed Folkers.
Absolutely.
And he
Mr. Personality himself.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he had, I interviewed at the place. He showed me around. His staff had that culture that you and I were talking about before we got started that I thought I'd kind of like. They seemed to have a playful sense of humor. They were working hard in the treatment room while I was
And their family?
Yeah. They seemed to be very connected with each other. And I asked about mentorship, and I asked about the other doctor that worked there, and she wasn't working that day. And I asked if I could reach out to her, because he made me an offer, and I kind of thought, well, I want to know, like, who are these people I'm working with? And I called her up, and one of the first things she said is, I like to teach. And I thought, that's it. And she was a fantastic mentor, Dr. Mary Skiles. She lives in Texas. She's moved out of state now, but she was available to me. I'd sit there with my lab results.
I remember her, too.
Yeah. She was
I mean, I
a lot of
think
places.
you and I probably know all the same.
Probably, yeah. But I was lucky that I had her. I could call her. She'd be a day off. I could call her. I could ask her it was often lab results, and she also would direct me. She gave me tips before I go into an exam room. I'd say, hey, can you look at these x-rays with me? You know, vomiting times this period, what are we going to see? And I don't see anything obvious. What do you think? And she'd look at it with me and give me her take. Maybe we decided an Explorer was a good recommendation. And right before I'd be about to go into that room, she'd go, remember to tell them he may die. And I mean, she kind of said it playfully, but she was reminding me to have the difficult conversations that are tempting to gloss over. And
Right.
it really helped me become a strong doctor by having somebody nudge me and then tell me, you already know this. I was often coming back to her with things that she was like, this is what I see. I'd say, this is what I see, and this is my plan. She'd validate my plan, and I gained confidence that way.
The one thing, because I love mentoring. I love it, love it, love it. I think it's awesome to teach. The one thing I always would have to tell the young veterinarians is keep it simple. Just keep it simple. Not everything you're going to see is going to be Cushing's, right? Well, what if it's just hot out and it's drinking a lot?
Yeah.
What if they have a very salty diet? It's just simple things that you just, and it's very important as a mentor, I believe, to have empathy for them, have that good social relationship with them, have that parental figure for them. Make sure you're there for them. Make sure that they also know that you've been through it, right?
Yeah.
But the worst part about mentoring is like, why did you do that? I don't know. It works.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't have the answer, but this is the way I've been.
You got to be able to, as a young professional, you got to be ready for that answer because they're just things we do that works, right? Obviously, vet school scares the crap out of everyone for using cortisone, prednisone, and I used to have veterinarians that come out with an itching dog before the days of Cytopoint. And just give a Benadryl shot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, did you mix that with a prednisone shot or dexamethasone or something?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I can't use that.
I was that person too. I did not like using cortisone. I mean, dermatology, you learn don't use, all the neurology don't use it. And Dr. Folkers was trying to encourage me to use it. And he was older and I didn't know. And, that sounded like an old school thing. I asked Dr. Skiles, who helped me feel more comfortable with it. And actually, it was actually a classmate, someone who graduated a year ahead of me. I happened to ask him in passing. He worked emergency medicine. He said, "Oh, there's a time and a place to use it." And he made me. Other people helped me feel more comfortable with it, but I was strictly trained. Like, there's no use for that medication.
Well, when I had little mentees that would always not do it, I would finally end the conversation with is like, okay, when they come to see me for the second opinion, I'm going to give cortisone and I'm going to look like the hero, right? And
right.
I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just that's what, when clients come in because their dog has diarrhea or their dog has a horrible hotspot or, whatever, they want to fix because they don't want to get up at 3 a.m. to walk the dog. They don't want to get up in the morning and have to pick up, melted Milky Way off the, $10,000 Persian rug.
Right.
They want a fix. And, sometimes you just got to there's nothing wrong with a short-acting cortisone shot or, some prednisone pills. Just give them that relief. You're not going to perfect it. We're practicing medicine, and they'll learn over time. But just remember, when you seek out mentorship, I think it's very important that you do listen to their mentors. You don't have to do everything they say, but if they're going to spend the time talking to you and giving you advice, at least take some of it.
Well, how do you feel about the relationship between the mentor and mentee? I mean, there has to be a trust, but
that's a big
mutual
part.
Trust,
right? Well, but the trust is built, right? If anyone comes out of school thinking immediately that trust is going to be there, on either side, it's not.
No,
it's built. But I think the social aspect is important, and also I think it's important for them as the mentor to introduce the mentee to their network.
Right.
Right? Take them to Southern California Veterinary Medical Association meeting. Take them to Vets for Pets. Take them, introduce them to your good clients. Like, to be like, hey, this is my new associate. If I'm not here, this person's going to do such an amazing job for you. And obviously, if they have questions, they know how to get a hold of me. We got you as a team. That is very important.
And training your CSRs to do the same.
Right.
Dr. G's not available that day. We've got Dr. Hawk that can do it for you. She's done this before. What Dr. Skiles would tell people is, see, Dr. Hawkins, I raised her. That was her little playful way of basically saying, like, I've helped make her who she is, and she'll be just like me.
Yeah.
But she did the same. Both her and Dr. Folkers took me to CVMA meetings. They took and others. I was exposed to the community. I didn't know a soul when I moved down here. I was brave. I moved down to Mission Viejo, and I did not know anybody in that area.
Yeah.
Except I had a job, and that's all I knew.
Correct. So if you're, I mean, and another thing I want to hit on too is the culture. I love what you did. You're like, you know what? I'm going to call the associate. You know, if you go into a practice on an interview and you just kind of just see it's kind of cold, it's not, you know, you're not getting those warm fuzzies, go interview somewhere else. There's many jobs available.
Yeah.
There's usually a reason there's a perpetual ad for certain veterinary clinics. It happened to me. Like my first job, I lasted 6 hours.
Wow.
6 hours. I was gone.
What happened?
It was a practice that you and I both know.
Okay.
This guy owned a practice in Laguna Niguel and then opened another one off the Ortega.
Okay.
And the veterinarian that actually owned the place was never there, right? He had other people there. And first thing they told me is, we expect you to see 60 appointments a day. Okay.
A setup for failure. That's a setup for failure.
And then they were like, oh, and then they told the tech in front of me, their head tech, make sure you count out all the pills that he counts out.
So they're setting you up for failure by not giving you sufficient time to work up a case or connect with an owner, and they're already telling you they don't trust you from the moment you walk in.
6 hours, bye-bye.
Wow.
I was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. I was very lucky because Mark Kopit's the one who hooked me up with Dr. Hamill.
Great.
In Laguna. And, you know, but I was very blessed because I worked at a veterinary clinic for 5 years before I went to vet school. And I started at Kennel Boy, ended up as manager. And actually one of the doctors actually loaded up the U-Haul for me and drove it to Illinois from North Carolina.
Wow. That's great.
He was one of the groomsmen in my wedding. So I already started with phenomenal mentorship before I even got to vet school. And then, of course, Dr. Hamill, ex-president of the California Veterinary Medical Association, very, very, his wife and him, very, very heavy into boards, AKC, OFA, all those types of breeds and stuff like that. Very lucky to be where I was. So that's why I kind of think I loved it. I loved it.
Did you fall into, like, obviously the 6 hours was a bad place, but did you after that experience, did you go out of your way to identify?
No,
or you just Mark vouched for him and said this will be a good place for you, and
no, I was stupid. I ended up in a second place,
okay.
And actually, I just released a short clip on it talking about how I thought I was going to be in a good place because my father-in-law knew of him. My father-in-law was a vet in Huntington. He got me a place in Newport, and he made me a deal. He's like, "Oh, you build up my gross revenue by X amount, I give you 20%." Well, we were going to blow that number out of the water. He started working 2 hours a day instead of 8. So so we slowed down.
Oh, yeah.
And then I called him out on it, and he's like, "Oh, I just thought you wanted more freedom." I'm like, "I've been out 8 months. I don't want freedom.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with staff problems. This isn't my I'm an associate."
Yeah.
Right? So that's when I got hooked up with Dr. Hamill. And I can understand. Dr. Hamill is an amazing, amazing man and veterinarian, but he's not everyone's cup of tea, right? He's from Oklahoma. You know, he has that, farm mentality sometimes, and very stubborn. Loved him for it though, but to get protocols changed and things changed and all that changed, it took a while. But I also knew I had someone there that if I needed anything, he was there.
Yeah. Part of that stubbornness, I think, is also sticking to his guns on things that he's absolutely never going to do. He's not going to do something that goes against his integrity or, is dishonest.
He was one of the old school that, you don't want to give him too much pain medication after surgery.
Right.
Because he'll move too much. And I'm like,
yeah.
We'll stop there, and we'll change that first. I actually changed vaccine protocols in 2001, which was a huge thing. And lover or hater Gene Dodds had a lot of great information, made you think, which is what I love. So it was hard, but I had a mentor that would listen to me too. It was a team concept.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, for sure. So how long did you end up in that general practice?
A year and a half.
Okay. Year and a half. And then you went into shelter medicine.
I actually I went to relief work, which was what Mary Skiles was doing. She actually relieved almost full time at that hospital, which was how I got to know her so well. And I wanted to, I also kind of I said the same thing. I said I wanted to be a place where I'd be mentored, and I was told I would be, and I wouldn't be left by myself at all for the first year. And I think it was the first weekend I was left by myself. So I did all right, but it was still, I didn't have anybody to bounce things off of. It was, we had to manage that experience. And that there were some things that would happen off and on.
Do you think you're truly ready for relief at a year and a half?
That's a good question. I thought I was then. I took shifts that Mary Skiles often couldn't do. She'd say, have her work for you. And then part of her mentorship of me as a relief vet was take your good medicine with you wherever you go. Be flexible. If they don't have the NSAID you want to use, but they have one of the older generation's NSAIDs, you need to be comfortable with doing that. You'll learn what they do at their practice, and you'll learn different things. You work a couple days, you don't like the practice, you'll never have to work there again. So did I have enough experience? I want to say I was really, when I was about 3 years out of practice, is when I felt more comfortable in my shoes as a veterinarian. I did, at some of those practices I relieved at, I was mentored by the vet at the animal shelter. I worked there a few days a week. I was mentored by Dr. Jeff Margolis in a practice that I did.
Dr. Margolis?
Yep.
Wow, you're bringing up names.
I know. Dr. Matt Wheaton, who I ended up working for more full-time. Eventually I did relief work for a few years, and then both Margolis and Wheaton offered me jobs at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Wow, now you really...
So then I
you
ended
were
up
right
working,
down the street from me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a small world for sure. And I feel like I've worked at practically all the veterinary hospitals around that area. And then after being in small animal practice solely with Dr. Wheaton, a very high-end, you're doing plasma transfusions and a lot of more intense workups. Learned a great deal. Went through some intense family stuff. Dear family members of mine that passed away, my grandparents who practically raised me, and I was helping them and managing them and working busy practice, and I just broke and Matt knew it was coming. I went and told him and kind of shifted back into the shelter world after that.
During the time you were doing general practice, were you feeling or noticing any signs of you were burning out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember crying in front of my husband and saying, is this who I am now? Just irritable, short-tempered, irritable. Before this started, I said I consider myself a functional introvert. And I got tired of everybody wants something from me. I just kind of want to be you can't figure this out on your own. It's not more than just somebody wanting help with
That's
diagnosis.
why you don't want your mentor ever to say
I know, you can't figure this out on your own. What's wrong with you? It could be something as simple as finding something that's, on the table in front of you. And, can you help me find this? And no, it's one more thing. I was fresh out of being able to have questions. I was also managing them back home in Sacramento with medical stuff. And then I was probably already headed there. It was a very busy practice. Where you're giving of yourself, giving all day long. And it's a strain. So I didn't have a whole lot left once I got home. Thankfully, my husband tolerated me in that state pretty well.
I make the argument that when you look at your professional identity, you kind of look at your values. If your number one value is work-life balance, I think you're going to have a hard time in general practice.
And I will say, we've already admitted when we graduated, so I'm Gen X. I identify with boomers, which are work firsters. Work tends to be prioritized over family. And I would argue that has been kind of my drive quite often, probably until my daughter was born. But, I would work late. My husband knew I'd be working late, and we made it work. But I was tired.
Well, I make the argument, going back to now I'm bringing out my MBA stuff. Boomers, I think, love working because they always had to. I mean, the only problem boomers had when it came to workforce was probably the years of Carter, right? When the inflation went crazy and stuff like that. I'm not saying Jimmy Carter, I'm not getting political, but that was the time, right? The late 70s, early 80s. So boomers didn't have to deal with a lot. Gen Xers, we had the Great Recession.
Yeah.
that was only second to the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're getting going again, nailed with the pandemic.
Yep.
I think that's hard. Just one of those is hard for any generation. But I think, you do have the boomer mentality as an Xer. I agree, because we learn that work ethic from them. But I think I can understand where the millennials and the Gen Zers are like, they saw us go through it, and they're like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
And then they come into the workplace, and their mentor is somebody who expects them to work crazy hours, take phone calls after work from staff who want to know what to schedule or what to do with this patient, and they don't get any breaks. Or they're expected maybe not to have any breaks.
Well, I finally had to put my foot down because I literally had a receptionist call and ask, hey, is it okay if I refill ID diet for this dog? I'm like, oh my gosh. Really? You're calling me on vacation to ask me that question? I also set that up, though. Like, I would always be available. But I think you need to be available for staff. I agree. If you turn your staff off at any point, then your staff is going to... Your staff is your lifeline.
Well, my theory was when I was running the OC shelter, or when I was the chief vet at the shelter, I would sometimes get a late phone call from an animal control officer. I would quietly grab the phone and tiptoe out of the bedroom. They'd always, I'm so sorry, would be the first, I'm so sorry to disturb you. And I'd say, oh no, it's fine, what's going on? And I would always try to assume a calm presence and answer their question. They didn't abuse it. They were polite. I had my team members some of whom you had in here last week, that they knew when to elevate. And they knew when to call. And same with our vets that would work. They knew when to elevate something and reach out to me.
You need to train your staff, too.
And exactly. They need to be trained. And I knew I would rather they called me than walk into a mess when I came back into the office to find out something was handled poorly or was not handled at all. So I welcomed the phone call. Yes, it's a small interruption, but it usually was brief, and I want them to feel comfortable reaching out.
Okay, so now let's go into some fun things. When did you decide to get into veterinary leadership?
I never decided. I don't think I consciously decided. I've joked with Dr. Weinstein and others that I'm going to write a book called Accidental Leadership or something like that. I think it was when I was in vet school.
That's a great name for a podcast, by the way.
Yeah, I was like, it's kind of like, oopsie, here I am.
Right.
Now what do I do?
Right.
When I was in vet school, my classmates told me to throw my hat in the ring to be a SAVMA. I'm not sure if it was student AVMA president. I don't even remember what it was.
It was the student chapter AVMA president.
I threw myself into that my hat in the ring because my friends nudged me to. I didn't even really consider it until they told me to, and so maybe they identified something in me I didn't realize I had. And then with that information, once I graduated and I was brought to a SCVMA meeting, I met Dr. Weinstein right away, and you know what he does? He identifies and recruits other leaders. And as soon as he heard what I had done and where I was going, he started pulling me into chapter leadership, and it just kept on going from there. Now I'm more intentional about it. Now that I know I'm in the position and I'm in leadership positions, I'm much more intentional about it. But at the time, I just said yes. Somebody would ask me, and I would say yes.
And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But on the whole, what would you say about the veterinary leadership in the United States?
Oh, it's a broad question. I think it's hard to answer because it's so broad. The veterinary leadership.
I can tell you the SCVMA has great leadership. I can tell you the CVMA, they could do better. Mm-hmm. But as a whole, over the profession, my argument is I think there's a lack of leadership. There's a lack of clear direction. There's a lack of vision.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I will say there is direction and vision in small pockets. I think there's a lack of cohesiveness amongst veterinarians, period. I feel very fortunate to be in Southern California where we have... a very tight-knit group? We have a really tight-knit group, and it does feel like family. People I'd never met before when I took this role, I feel like they're family now. We give each other hugs when we see each other at meetings, and it's just, we share our stories. And I don't know if that's
Your war stories.
yeah, they are they often are war stories in this field for sure.
Right.
I don't know whether that lack of cohesiveness is just siloing of the veterinary community in their own spaces, lack of getting that introvertedness where we just don't get out and talk to our colleagues and have those interactions.
Well, that's kind of deep, because I could say we don't go out and see our colleagues because we're all burnout, right? Because burnout
it's kind of a cycle that's hard to get out of.
Burnout's three things, right? Emotional exhaustion, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
The emotional labor that goes into veterinary medicine is insane. Second thing is lack of self-worth. Yeah. When a client yells at you and makes you feel awful, or they destroy you online and tell the whole world about how they feel about you, that could do it. And the third thing is also what we call, depolarization, where you just want to step away.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to really interact with people. You have to have all three of those. And so it's very hard to find it within yourself to say, oh, I really need to go to this chapter meeting. Plus, we all have lives. We all have husbands, kids that we haven't seen.
Yeah. You can't sit down, though. When you get home, if you sit down, then it's over. You're not getting back up again.
No, you're not getting up.
At least that was true for me. Right. Well, so my first mentor was my mom. And I remember things that she said, that she would say, and probably still says, things like, if people invite you to go do something and you're always saying no, eventually you're going to drop off the list. So she was explaining to me why she was going to like a work function that she didn't particularly feel like going to in the moment. But she said, if you say no too many times, then they won't even invite you anymore. And I do feel like I've done that with moms, now that I've referenced being a mom multiple times. They're not veterinarians. They have different lives. A lot of the people in my community, many of them don't work, and their focus is on things that don't matter to me. They didn't get to go to yoga class because their husband didn't get home in time. And I'm like, I didn't eat lunch today. Yeah. I haven't been to the bathroom in this many yoga? Hours. Like, I'm lucky if did I brush my teeth this morning? Like, self-care wasn't even there for me. Like, yoga is a next level thing. So sometimes it'd be hard to connect with some of these other people, but I forced myself to attend things. And so I now have another community of people that support me and can drive my daughter someplace or have friends that connect with our family. And you have to have that network. You have to take a moment to put yourself, to push through the discomfort of you're tired, you don't feel like leaving the house, you don't know anybody there. To start making those connections, find one person that you can connect with, that you end up texting a photo of this lesion, what do you think? Or I had a bad day, do you want to catch a drink or something? Just one person, and you can start building that community.
My wife put together a bunco group.
That's great.
Yeah, once a month with each kid's class moms.
Yeah.
So she goes three Thursdays out of 4 every month. She's playing bunco.
That's great.
And it's weird too, because now the oldest group, obviously our kids are out of college and stuff like that. So the stories change. Instead of, hey, my kid's reading at a 10th grade level and they're in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Now they're like, oh, my son, or my
well, you can identify with these other parents because you have that bond.
Exactly.
Yeah. I forced myself to attend, when my daughter started elementary school, I forced myself to attend this mom's breakfast thing or something. Oh, it was awful. All these women, I didn't like any of them. There was nothing I connected with any of them with. And I had a mediocre time, but I checked it off my list. And then I went to the next one, and I went to a couple more, different versions, iterations of bunco, a wine gathering or whatever. And I ended up collecting a group of about 4 friends. They all have kids that are the same age as my daughter. We share our stories, our information, our intel, what's going on with the school. And I'm so glad I did it. And it's all because I forced myself to. I didn't enjoy it.
It
wasn't
recover.
Awful. It wasn't painful. It was just odd. It was just something that wasn't my cup of tea. But I did it for that reason, because I wanted to establish a community. And I knew that if I didn't, my daughter might not be invited to things or might not be included either. And so it was important for me on that level as well.
When you were talking about the different silos of veterinary medicine, I think that's one of the problems that we have with the leadership, and why corporate was able to sneak in, because they saw a very fragmented profession. And they're like, oh, we could take over all these hospitals and then run them all the same way. And we can then control pricing. And that's why I think when the veterinary community is upset about the corporate entity, we got to basically look back at ourselves. We allowed it to happen. And again, I kind of blame the lack of leadership as a whole to allow that, the fragmentation, the siloing, and all that to happen. What would you agree or disagree with that type of statement?
I mean, I don't disagree with it. I do think that in a lot of our areas where the veterinary community is tight-knit, they share a lot of the same stresses and they have that comfort. Although the other part of it, though, is just the money. So straight up money. I mean, if you worked this is your life and you built up this practice for 20 years or however many years, 5 years, and you're presented with one offer that's really high and one offer that's
even higher.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take care of yourself as well. So
Right.
it's really hard to compete with that.
And I beat myself up every day because I'm guilty. I sold to corporate, and people are like, oh, you're just, oh my gosh, now you're talking bad about corporate. But they painted a picture that was exact opposite of what was going to happen.
So you got the bait and switch.
Oh my
What would
gosh.
have made, so if somebody had told you that was going to happen, like, oh, if you had a community of people who had the knowledge or experience that could share that information in advance, would you have done differently?
I would have. I would not have sold. But I'm actually very blessed I sold because it allowed me to continue my education, continue getting on to where I am, and able to do what I'm doing now. It gave me the basis, the financial basis, and the knowledge for me to be able to sit here and have this conversation with you, which I couldn't do before. The one thing I noticed when I left veterinary practice is I was looking for fulfillment still.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Everyone's like, oh, you did so much for the community. You did so much for your clients. But I was like, I had to charge for it. Right? I love my job so much. I couldn't believe I was getting paid to do it. If that sounds crazy. And I hope that feeling comes back into the profession again.
Yeah.
What is the CVMA doing now to address the attrition?
Oh, I don't want to speak for. They usually don't like me to just speak. I shouldn't say don't like me. I don't usually go out and just speak on behalf of CVMA. But
this is your opinion.
I will
this does not represent the
yeah,
organization.
I don't want to say I'm represent. What it's doing mostly is working with the veterinary schools, both UC Davis and Western U, to identify ways to help ensure that the students that are graduating have what veterinarians in the community are seeking. So there's that component. So things like access to veterinary care is discussed now at veterinary schools. It wasn't when you and I went to veterinary school. I got ivory tower for sure. I had to learn more about how to consider different tiers of care or, in practice, and how to meet the client where they are while still addressing the pet's needs. They have legislation that passed on high volume spay neuter, being able to have a certification program at both veterinary schools so that students have access to learn high quality spay neuter, and the goal is to not just make high volume spay neuter veterinarians, but so that students can graduate with confidence and comfort in doing surgeries. One of the most difficult surgeries there is.
But a high volume spay neuter, a spay neuter clinic, if you have a problem dealing with clients, that might be a solution for you.
I still do high volume spay neuters, and that's part of what I enjoy about it, is that I can go in, I can feel like I'm helping the community, and then I go home and I'm done. I'm not worrying about. Sometimes I worry a little bit about them if they were a little more complicated surgery, the one of the day, but I don't have some of the
one that doesn't have a horn attached to the ovary.
Or that I had to really go digging in, or had some bleeding during the surgery or something, wasn't as routine as I would like them to be. But a lot of the stressful client interactions are eliminated in those scenarios. So those are some of the things that the state VMA is doing, is just trying to engage with the schools on what they need. I also know one of the schools, Western, sent me they're working on a survey that I'll be sending out, basically asking what veterinarians in the community are seeing or wanting to see from new grads.
And there's also a big growing conversation out there about the cost of care.
Yeah.
And I mean, the profession's getting destroyed for it.
Mm-hmm.
Publicly, socially.
Yeah.
Is there anything the SCVMA, CVMA has in mind that can try to address this issue?
Oh, I wish I had something, a magic wand there. I will say SCVMA works with Downtown Dog Rescue to offer free wellness clinics for the communities up in LA. These are specific zip codes. These are people that really, they don't walk into they've never been to a veterinarian before. So, and we use volunteer teams, veterinarians, vet students, vet hospital team members to deliver that care. It's just basic vaccinations, deworming, microchip, defleeing. And if they need something more, there's often a conversation about what they need and a voucher or recommendation to a place that will help them. As far as other access to care things that SCVMA does, it's mostly things like we have a grant that we work with the Animal Health Foundation called the Angel Fund Grant and the Boydston Grant. There's a second grant there. And we receive requests from hospitals for funds, and our board reviews those and overwhelmingly approves many of them because
Correct.
They're pretty straightforward.
We've used it.
Yeah.
I used it when I was in practice. It was amazing. That Angel Fund was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a great step to help people get, and the veterinary hospitals have to match it, help get the care that they need. Mm-hmm. And it's not. I look at these estimates; they're not being recommended an MRI for a urinary tract infection. They're getting, a cystotomy, an ear hematoma, whatever. They're getting
Correct.
Basic care. Yeah.
What I used to do at my practice, at both practices when I owned both, is at both practices I did the 12 days of Christmas, and every December I would do 12 surgeries for free.
Oh, that's wonderful. How'd that make you feel?
Fulfilled.
Yeah.
I remember I did a FHO, I did a cystotomy, I did a PU, there was a bunch of things
Mm-hmm.
I did. And it was very rewarding because it built a trust in the community, which you can never buy.
Right.
It helped me sleep better at
Mm-hmm.
night, looking for that fulfillment.
Yeah.
But there are things you can do yourself. Obviously, if you don't own the practice, you got to talk to the practice owner and just brainstorm,
Mm-hmm.
come up with cool ways to try to counteract the cost of care, because the cost of care is crazy. I mean, and the thing is that you can talk to your lab. They will work with you if you're coming
Mm-hmm.
up with some sort of idea for the community. Talk to other veterinarians, see
Yeah.
if they're interested. I used to do the free spray neuters for Laguna Beach.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's every April they have that I used to do that. They used to come in with little vouchers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but our clinic was the only one that was doing it.
I'm aware that voucher programs have been tried before, and they're sometimes challenging to continue. We do have, the SCVMA has the free shelter exam. It's not a voucher. It's just basically something that the shelters receive to let new pet owners
Right.
know that these are hospitals that'll participate in a free exam.
Just give away
Yeah.
an exam. You don't understand how clients will fall in love with you.
Well, they
because
got to find out who's going to be the best connection for them too.
Right.
So how are they going to know
Exactly.
if they don't ever walk in through the door?
I couldn't agree with you more. It's just, the clinics I used to have a problem with when I was practicing, and I know you probably know of them too, that would just nickel and dime every patient and client that would leave.
And they have nothing left when they get to you.
Oh man, it was awful.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I was at the emergency clinic, they diagnosed blank, and it cost me $4,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm like, okay, so we need to do an ultrasound, probably some lab work, or they probably did lab work, but
Right.
we need to do, I don't have any money left. That's what you were
Yeah.
left with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was lucky I had the authority to either give away or discount some things, and they're usually things that, like an ultrasound, it's my time, and I could just take a look. I'll never forget a feline patient that came to me, an elderly owner. He had no money. Cat was the typical ADR, not doing well, ain't doing right, and it should have had blood work, X-rays, ultrasound, but it had a distended abdomen and it was not eating well. And I said, let me put the ultrasound probe on it. And we found it. It had masses. It looked like it had like carcinomatosis or something. Couldn't diagnose it obviously without any biopsies or surgeries or anything,
But
but I had enough information to help him make a decision, and it didn't have to cost thousands of dollars.
And it was a difficult decision too.
Yeah,
It's
it
not
wasn't an easy decision.
Those conversations are so hard to have,
Yeah.
especially elderly clients.
Yeah.
Oh, you bring tears to my eyes right now just think of that.
Yeah.
I mean, those were hard.
Yeah, but it takes some creativity, and it takes some. I was one of those too. I came out of vet school thinking you have to do it this way. I had a parvo patient, and we has to have an IV catheter and hospitalized and all, for days and everything. I didn't know that some people use sub-Q could send home sub-Q fluids and still have a good outcome. I didn't know that some of those things were done. Now there's protocols for it,
Yeah.
But to me, I was completely ignorant about it. I didn't know.
Yeah. Ignorance is bliss, isn't it?
It is until the pet owner is upset that they spent money on something, then they find out that they maybe could have saved on, or I've been guilty of maybe overutilizing their resources and not offering an option that's maybe less optimal. It's not going to be the gold star plan, but it may be very successable on its own, and the pet stays in your home. And you with the backup plan. Hey,
you don't need the gold.
Tomorrow come and recheck, or you need to. We're gonna connect with each other in this short interval. You know what? That cat fight abscess, it's open right now. Usually we would want to anesthetize a cat and place a drain in that, but it's open, and you're telling me you're resource limited. I'm going to have you hot compress it. You're going home with these oral antibiotics, and we're rechecking in 2 days, 3 days.
Right.
This is the estimate for the drain. By the way, be prepared for this cost, because if it comes back in here and it's closed up and full, then that's where we're going to need to move. But having an if-then, or having more of a flow chart approach, then this is the only way.
Well, and that's the argument a lot of people give when I have them on this show, is that, unfortunately, veterinary school are taught by brilliant veterinarians, but they're professional academians. They haven't been fighting the fight, right? They've been doing an amazing job with research, amazing job with education, amazing job on the other side. But the problem is that they only know the gold standard, because by the time they get to a veterinary school, they've probably exhausted everything else.
So I'm hearing that the students need to be open-minded to when the early career veterinarians need to be open-minded to the non-ivory tower methods that are going to be what they're utilizing once they get into practice.
But that's been an argument since we graduated.
Yeah.
I mean, that hasn't changed, right? Cortisone's safe. Try it.
It's okay. It's okay. But I held that teacher on a pedestal. I knew that was the only way.
Right. Well, the gold standard's great. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I would say, would I be wrong in saying 85% of the time you got to move away from the gold standard? Right?
No, that's not. I wouldn't say that's wrong. I mean, it's most of the time you're going to have to do something creative. I see it in human medicine too, where they give some strange medication that's impossible to give to a baby, a toddler, a child. And I think, why don't they have something like, we've got an injectable antibiotic that lasts, we've got transdermal, and you want me to put six cc's of this awful tasting medication to a child's mouth 4 times a day?
Yeah,
like,
liquid metronidazole, right?
Yeah, how is that even? Why did they not even consider that parents are going to be completely non-compliant with this? This is a no-brainer.
Rifampin is one of them. I had to give my kids rifampin.
Wow.
And we had a MRSA outbreak in our house, and rifampin tastes awful, and it's liquid. I mean, they're young kids; they can't swallow a pill.
Yeah.
And there's no other way to do it. It was, I mean, whew, talk about wrangling. You and I had talked about wrangling a Bengal cat.
Yeah.
Try to wrangle it down a 6-year-old and take that liquid. It's hard. Client compliance is, and then that client will get mad too if they are having a hard time treating it.
Right. You have to choose what's going to work for them. If it's somebody who says they really can't give that medication, then find another way.
One of the things I also try to stress home is that working in underserved communities can be very rewarding.
I agree.
How have you seen that increase the human-animal bond?
Working in underserved communities. I mean, I feel like the bond is usually there when I go into those areas. It's not hard to find. It's supporting that connection with the pet and the pet owner by helping care for that animal when it needs something. So if it has a medical condition and they feel they've been turned away or they don't know it can be fixed, just knowing that there's somebody there that can actually help them in that situation is wonderful. They don't have to necessarily give up their pet or find some other solution. and the basic wellness. Basic wellness. A lot of the underserved communities are the ones where I see a lot of parvovirus, things that,
We could vaccinate for.
yeah, just having access to the vaccines and the awareness that it exists. For those of us who have been living and breathing animals and veterinary medicine for our entire lives, it feels like, how could somebody not know this? But people don't know. You have to be aware that not everybody knows that this is a vaccine preventable disease.
Yeah, if there are any, anyone out there, what's the easiest way to find the best way to help the underserved community?
Well, reach out to me. SCVMA works with Downtown Dog. I know a lot of communities up in LA that are open to that. There's a lot of rescues that are working with, and some rescues are easy to deal with and some aren't, but they really are all wanting to do the same thing. They're trying to help pet owners in need. They're trying to help keep pet owners homed. And often they're not going to be in the Newport beaches. They're going to be more in the Santa Ana area. That you're going to look for the low socioeconomics is usually what you're looking for, and it's not hard to find.
Or even the retirement communities.
Yes.
Retirement communities. It's so important, that human-animal bond. I am all for the older couples or the widowed to have that companionship. It is huge. I've seen it personally in my own family help. When my dad passed and when my mother-in-law passed, the fact that they had that companion changed.
Well, they still had something to care for, too.
Get a reason to leave the house. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's huge. Okay, we're going to go some quick questions.
Okay.
Don't overthink them.
All right.
Okay? And just biggest pet peeve about veterinary medicine.
I don't know. I don't know what my biggest pet peeve is. Am I overthinking already?
Yes. I would say we're slow to change.
I would say that we're resistant to alternative. I guess it's sort of, but so many hospitals there's so many veterinarians that are like, no, it can only be done this way. There's no other option.
Yeah, exactly. We're stubborn.
Yeah.
Very stubborn when it comes to, it's been working for 30 years.
But like rigid, we dig our heels in rigid.
Yeah. Yeah. Like trying to pull that 140-pound Great Dane into the exam room.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I agree. Maybe we could draw a comic of that.
I can do it. Yeah.
You can do it? Hardest lesson you learned in veterinary medicine?
That I'm never going to know it all. I thought I was going to know it all. And I never. You have good days where you feel like they come and see you, the early career veterinarian, because the long-time veterinarian didn't know the answer and you fixed it. I'm on top of the world. Next day, a healthy pet dies under anesthesia. I mean, it's just, you're going to have good days and bad days, and you're going to learn from all of them, and the learning can't stop.
One piece of advice you give to a new grad?
Learn your soft skills. You need to learn how to communicate with pet owners, foster the connection with the pet owner, and focus on that before the diagnosis of the pet.
Best resource for young veterinarians?
Each other, your veterinary community.
I would say Vin.
Vin's pretty good.
Vin's good.
Yeah.
Plum.
Yep.
Or the Veterinary Nerd Handbook.
Yeah, that was pretty handy. Plum. I used to refer to Dr. Wheaton as my pocket plum, because I could, instead of me opening up, I could just holler to him. He was like the phone a friend. What was the dose for this?
You get it memorized after a while. You'll learn that. You'll know the cefazolin dose. You will know the Maloxidil dose. You'll just know the Torb dose.
The other resources are your staff members, your techs.
Absolutely.
They know how it's been done. They know that client. They know the little quirks of this person or that pet. And when you're open to their comments or their thoughts, you're going to have a tech for life.
Would you do it over again?
Yes.
Look at that, without hesitation. I'm wondering if that's just us. I mean, I don't know. I'll find out through the research, but I want all these young career veterinarians to have the love and passion that we have for this profession. Yeah. This profession's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
There's something that, I mentioned it earlier. We have a horse now. There's this feeling of when the horse puts his face right next to yours and breathes all over you with that hot horse breath, or sniffs it, it's heart rate slows down, like everything sort of. Same with when
The endorphins release.
yeah, the cat that never goes to anybody comes and sits on your lap.
The natural morphine.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, there's just,
It's
I think we all understand that. Veterinarians understand that, and pet owners understand that. It's just, it's a connection that we all get.
Well, Dr. Hawkins, I want to thank you. Anyone listening, if you're interested, and I please hope you are, in veterinary leadership, shelter medicine, serving the underserved, how can they get a hold of you? What are some of your best ways to
You
contact
can,
you?
I would email me at jhawkins@scvma.org.
You have a LinkedIn page?
Yeah. I don't know what it's, just look me up on LinkedIn. I don't do much on LinkedIn, but if you message me, I will respond. It just takes a while.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, especially those younger career veterinarians, always keep learning, always keep grinding. Know that there's a Dr. Hawkins, there's a Dr. G, there's many of us out here for you. If you need someone to talk to, please reach out to us and do it. Dr. Hawkins, it was wonderful. I'm going to have you back again.
Good. I look forward to it. This was fun.
Yeah, I love the leadership piece especially because I think, like I said, there's a big lack. And I'm hoping that there are a bunch of young leaders that are coming now that can help us do as much as we can to bring back the profession that you and I fell in love with.
Yes.
It's still there. We just need to do it differently, I think.
I think they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get it. Absolutely. And we'll talk to you all next time. Thank you.
Hey, around